I'm going to teach you how to tune your force feedback to your maximum potential, desires, and details that make a difference. There's so many fantastic videos over YouTube and social media in general showing my own, their own, and everyone else's force feedback settings and what they use for specific simulation games across the market. But today I'm going to be giving you an in-depth tutorial on how you can maximize your own feelings and make your own force feedback settings through that. So that being said, this is Sim School episode 2 and we're going to be getting straight into the heart of the video. So we're going to kickstart this video with a term that's said quite a lot but not really understood a lot, to be honest, and that's going to be clipping within the sim racing wheel or the force feedback system that you have that's translating to your hands. The way that I explain force feedback clipping to people when I am coaching them is it's like a stereo system inside of a car. If you turn the music too loud, then you will feel the vibrations from the music from the car, from the stereo system, but you won't really hear the words inside of the song and or the musical instruments. If you turn the music really low, then you will have to focus on the really nuanced details to be able to hear the song, to hear the words, to hear the musical instruments. You will be able to hear them all, but you have to focus really hard to do so. If you turn the music to an appropriate level, then you're able to enjoy the song to its maximum ability and hear the words and the musical instruments and everything that's happening within the song quite easily, to be honest. And the force feedback system is actually really similar to this with the clipping and the approach that I take to explaining it and feeling it as well. If you turn your force feedback too high and your signals from inside the game and the strength from the wheelbase is not able to deal with those signals, then you're going to be able to not feel the nuanced details from the tire sliding, individual curbstones, or the environmental effects around the track. If you turn the force feedback too low, you're going to have to focus really hard on the nuanced details to feel what's happening with the car, and can be distracting, to be honest, because you have to put a lot of the mental energy into feeling what's happening with the hands. If you put the force feedback to an appropriate level, then you're able to feel all of the details, environmental, car and track as well, without having to distract yourself, and it becomes a really comfortable, confident and enjoyable experience. To give a visual representation of what can be happening here with your force feedback, at the top we have 15 newton meters, at the bottom we have 0 newton meters. Of course this will change by the strength of the ability for your sim racing system as well, but I'm using the Fanatec DD1 at the moment and using 15 newton meters inside of the wheelbase, so this is how it would look for me. So when you're stationary and when your wheel is basically not activated, you're of course applying 0 newton meters of force into the wheel. But let's say I have my force feedback set too strong inside of the game and the signals that the game are trying to send to my wheel is, let's say, too strong, and what will be happening is my wheel is only capable of making 15 newton meters of detail, but the game wants to go to here. And that's where the problem starts to arise, because anything above this line is just going to be numb force feedback with only a weighted feeling and will not be telling me about the nuanced details of the track, the curbing and the car as well. So your whole goal and your whole mindset, at least for myself, what I'm trying to teach you today, is to keep your force feedback strength within this usable range from bottom bar to top bar, and how you can do that is adjusting and having visual representations within the sim racing titles that you have to maximize it. Some sim racing games don't have a visual representation of what's happening with the force feedback clipping inside of the game. A game that comes to mind is F1 24 and all of the F1 game series as well. They do not have a visual bar that shows you the force feedback clipping like iRacing does, for example, and it's so fantastic, so usable, and it really makes the user experience so much better when you can see what's happening with your force feedback and set it up appropriately. So if you do not have a visual bar to help you guide yourself with the force feedback, what you can do basically is keep on increasing the strength until when you're turning through a high-speed corner that the wheel just starts to become numb. When the wheel starts to become numb through a high-speed corner, then that is normally a good indication that the force feedback clipping is happening. The reason I say a high-speed corner and not a low-speed corner is in a high-speed corner, let's say, was easily flat out. Turn 1 at Silverstone in a Formula 1 car is easily flat out. What means you're able to focus on the details of the wheel and the car is not really moving around that much. If you try to set your 4C back for a low speed corner and try to do your clipping testing on a low speed corner, basically the car is going to be moving around a little bit more and becomes a bit different and a bit more difficult, to be honest, to understand the differences between the 4C backs and what's happening in one or the other. So my personal advice would be to do your 4C back clipping testing on a high-speed corner that is easily flat out. Something that is also worth noting is the faster that the car goes, the more difficult of a time that the 4C back has to translate what's happening as well. In real life, you have so many gyros around your body, and that is often referred to of seat of the pants feeling. You don't have this in sim racing, so something that is also worth noting about 4C back is generally the slower car that you're going in, the better the 4C back will be able to deliver you what's happening with the car, quite simply because it has more time to do so. One of the problems with driving super fast cars in sim racing is there's just not enough time for the 4C back system to tell you what's happening, because by the time you've already got to the corner, you're out of the corner. And that is why when you're driving slower cars, let's say the Formula Ford in iRacing, the Mazda MX-5, or generally road cars as well, you can actually start to have a bit more feeling with the wheel comparing to driving an F1 car, whether that's in iRacing or F1 or Assetto Corsa, quite simply because the car is traveling faster, so the sim has a harder time keeping up with what's happening on the car and the track as well. The next topic that we're going to be covering is having a heavy wheel and or a light wheel inside of your hands. And what I mean by that is the overall strength that you're turning your wheel to get to go around the corner. I quite like having my 4C back quite high because it helps me to guide and judge myself going around the corner without turning the steering wheel too quickly. Whereas some people like to have a really light steering wheel in their hands that they can do very delicate and subtle inputs with. And this all comes down to your strengths and weaknesses as a driver. For me personally, one of my weaknesses as a driver is I can like to turn the wheel too quickly if I become frustrated, for example. And by doing this, this can upset the balance of the car. So what I do to counteract that is quite simply by making the weight of the steering wheel quite heavy, and that allows me to have to put a lot more exertion through my muscles in my arms and my shoulders as well to get to the desired turning angle of the corner, and it means it naturally dampens and slows down my steering wheel input to an appropriate level to go as fast as possible throughout the corner. There's some drivers who don't need this, to be honest, and they're very good at judging the turning speed going into the apex for the steering wheel just naturally, or they're maybe more disciplined. Whatever one it is, but they're able to run a lighter 4C back system without turning the steering wheel too quickly. And this is all about understanding your strengths and weaknesses as a driver. For me, like I say, one of my weaknesses, to be completely honest and transparent with you on this video today, is if I don't have the 4C back strength quite high, I can turn the wheel too quickly and overslip the front angle of the tires. And this might be different and inverted to different driving styles and different preferences, but basically my example is to analyze your weaknesses and set up the strength of the wheel or the lightness of the wheel to counteract those differences. The final point that I'm going to touch upon today is understanding what's important to you within your 4C back system. Some people might be looking for realism, some people might just be looking to go as fast as possible. I'm definitely in the second category and looking to go as fast as possible. So within that, you can understand and set up and tune the differences inside of the sim racing game or your firmware, basically, whether it's provided by Fanatec, Logitech, Moza, VRS, SimiaCube. Everyone has their own firmware that you can be adjusting the in-wheel settings for the dampening, how fast, strong, and many mind-blowing differences that you can set inside of the steering wheel firmware. You can also do inside of the game. And let's say that you're someone that cares about the realism and the feeling of the car to be as close to realistic as possible, even at the expense of lap time, then you would maybe want to set the curb forces higher. Maybe you would want the grass effect to be affecting the wheel. Maybe you want the bumps of the track to be jolting your hands when you're driving. I personally don't want that. I want to go as fast as possible, so I tune my force feedback settings to basically minimize everything but what's happening with the tire model and the car model as well while going around the track. I can see that I've gone over a curb. I can see that I'm going over a bump by the suspension moving. I don't need a distraction in my hand and the feeling that I'm getting from the car because I've gone over those bumps. I want the car to be telling me exactly what the grip level and what was possible while going around the corner without being distracted by the curbings and the bumps of the track as well. So again, with the graph behind me to be showing you a visual example of utilizing the force feedback for all of the car's feedback, or in my opinion, wasting it, or at least in my view would be wasting the force feedback to tell me about the curbing, the track bumps, or even going on side of the grass. But again, that's just my personal opinion, and I'm not looking for the wheel to be fully realistic. I'm just looking to go as fast as possible. So with my approach of using all of the force feedback to tell me what's happening with the car and the grip of the car available, then you can see I'm able to utilize all of the force feedback to be telling me exactly what's going to be happening with the car. But let's say the red is now the environmental effects of the track, and that can be including the grass, curbstone, bumps, and everything around the track that is not directly telling you about the force feedback around the tire model and the car model as well. You can see that that red is going to be filling up, let's say, half of the usable force feedback strength. So by the time you've already got around the corner, let's say you're going into the corner, the braking zone, the car is bumping around, you've got to the curbstone, you're touching the inside curb, and then you've used half of the usable force feedback even before you can learn what's happening with the car. So how can you expect your force feedback system to be giving you the maximum detail possible? And how can you expect yourself to understand everything what's happening with the car if half of the force feedback is already being dispersed and used to tell what's happening with the curb? For me, this is just something that can be improving my pace, hopefully your pace as well, to understand that now all I have to use, because half of the force feedback is used by the curbing and the environmental effects of the track, I can only use half of the force feedback available to tell me what's happening with the car. For me, because I'm chasing lap time, I'm chasing perfection on the track, and I'm chasing the ultimate performance, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer to basically use all of the force feedback to get maximum potential out of the car and for it not to be wasted on the curbstones. But with that being said, I do understand that some people want realism within the sim and some people do not really care about the lap time and they're just looking for fun. So with that being said, there are many different approaches and none of them are wrong, to be honest, and none of them are perfect. None of them are right, because everyone has their own individual feeling and desires, what they're looking for in the feeling of the wheel as well. With that being said, this has been basically my guide on how to tune the force feedback and how you can maximize that potential as well. I've been Brendan Lee. This has been episode 2 of Sim School, and this is how to be tuning force feedback and avoiding force feedback clipping. Grazie ragazzi. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next week for episode 3. Ciao ciao. Bye bye.